My name is Heather. I was 27 when they handed everything to her. I always believed that loyalty meant something, that the quiet people, the reliable ones, the ones who stayed late to lock up and showed up early with coffee, eventually got seen. I believed my parents would remember who kept the lights on when dad was in recovery and mom was near tears over payroll. But belief doesn't change reality. The print shop wasn't glamorous. It was dusty, cluttered, with faded photographs of our grandfather in coveralls above the cash register. He'd started it in 1973, and every inch of the place smelled like permanence. Ink, old receipts, vinyl banners, wedding invitations. It was a place people went when they wanted something to last. I never left. Not really. After college, I moved back to Kansas City, turned down a design firm offer, and took a part-time job behind the register. By the time I was 24, I was running operations. Billing, scheduling, vendor calls. When dad had his second spinal surgery, I worked 12-hour shifts. When mom decided to go digital, I taught myself basic e-commerce and built our entire online system in 3 weeks. I never asked for anything. Then Nicole came back, my sister, 3 years younger, loud, charming, allergic to anything with routine. She swept into town in a vintage convertible she probably didn't register and started referring to our family business as Heritage Gold. Within weeks, she had my parents swooning over her vision. Nicole talked about disruption like it was salvation. Legacy through reinvention, she said, pointing at our corkboard of order slips like it was a crime scene. She replaced it with a whiteboard and drew purple stars beside her goals. Rebrand, relaunch, go viral. They ate it up. The announcement came one Thursday afternoon in a rented co-working loft across town. Mom called it a soft transition. Dad used the phrase future-proofing. Nicole just smiled and slid a set of branded mock-ups across the table. A new logo, a new slogan, and a new title. CEO. She was wearing a blazer with the tag still attached. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The air felt like glue. They said it wasn't about merit. They called me the foundation, the glue that kept things running. Nicole, they said, had spark. Spark moves people. Spark attracts investors. Spark gets the key. That night, I drove to the old shop by myself. It was almost 9 p.m. The door still creaked. The overhead fan still buzzed like a tired wasp. I walked behind the register and logged in like I always did, as admin, because no one ever thought to assign me anything else. The inbox was flooded with vendor inquiries and client reorders. Nicole hadn't responded to a single one. At 10:04 p.m., Dad forwarded me an email with a list of accounts Nicole wanted transferred. He added a note. She's got good instincts, just needs your help setting the base. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. The next morning, Nicole posted a picture outside the shop, her hand on the front door, sunglasses on, captioned, "First day of empire building." That afternoon, she scheduled a strategy lunch, not with me, with a guy named Jace who called himself a creative growth architect. Mom introduced him like he was royalty. Dad said he had vision. Nobody looked at me, and that's when something sharp lodged behind my ribs. Not bitterness, not yet. Something quieter, a beginning. 3 days after the rebrand announcement, I returned to the shop and found the corkboard gone. In its place hung a sleek whiteboard. Written across it in violet marker were the words, "Legacy through disruption." Nicole's handwriting was loopy, chaotic, and underlined twice. She was standing in front of it when I arrived, arms folded like she was guarding something sacred. "We're not selling paper," she said, turning toward me. "We're selling identity." Behind her, the vendor schedules, delivery reminders, and client follow-ups I'd pinned there for months were gone. She hadn't transferred them anywhere, just tossed them. I opened my mouth, closed it. Nicole didn't notice. She was too busy admiring her own writing. That afternoon, Jay showed up, late, naturally, in sockless loafers and a mustard jacket. He walked through the print floor like he was scouting for demolition. "Energy's good," he said, nodding at the risograph machine. "Bit analog, but we can lean into that, make it a vibe." He didn't shake my hand, didn't ask my name. "Jace will be advising us on client expansion," Nicole announced, like she'd summoned him out of thin air. "Brand presence, affiliate streams, social optimization, big picture stuff." I was tasked with support. That meant running the numbers for Jace's laughably optimistic revenue forecast. It meant correcting grammar in his pitch decks, hunting for old order histories, and explaining basic print processes to him while he nodded like I was his unpaid intern. He thanked me once, but even then, his eyes flicked back to Nicole like I was the help and she was the future. By week 2, Nicole had cleared out the small front counter and brought in a neon sculpture in the shape of an ampersand. "It symbolizes collaboration," she said, plugging it into the wall. It didn't light up. Customers still walked in asking for the usual: memorial programs, wedding bundles, church flyers. Mrs. Lockhart wanted her grandson's graduation invites with gold foil. The Monroe twins needed menus for their farm wedding. I took the orders, processed payments, checked ink levels, cleaned the rollers. Nicole sat in the break room posting filtered selfies with captions like CEO Flow and Building from the Inside. She'd changed the shop's social profile name to just our last name. No first initials, no co-founders, just hers. I caught Dad watching her from the back hallway once, a quiet smile on his face like she'd finally become the daughter he always pictured. When I asked if we were keeping the weekly vendor logs, he waved a hand. "Nicole's setting new systems," he said. "We're pivoting." The word left a sour taste. That Friday, Mom brought sandwiches from a new vegan place and said, "I'm proud of you both, Nicole, for dreaming. And Heather, you're like the engine under the hood. Steady, reliable." She said it kindly, like she thought it was a compliment. Engines break, glue dries, and people who hold the weight too long, they fracture. Still, I smiled, ate my sandwich, returned to the order desk, and fixed a pricing typo on Nicole's custom identity package. At 6:17 p.m., Nicole tapped her acrylics on my desk. "Can you train Mia on invoicing next week? I want you free to help Jace prep the deck for Monday." "Mia?" I asked. "She's interning, super sharp, minor in design thinking." Whatever that meant, I nodded. That night, as I closed the register and turned off the overhead fan, Nicole leaned in the doorway like she had a secret. "You're the glue, you know," she said. "Seriously, I couldn't do this without you." She smiled like that fixed something. But I wasn't interested in praise anymore. I was interested in why she needed me so close, and what she was planning while I kept everything from falling apart. Monday came fast, and with it, a pitch meeting Nicole called a milestone moment. She'd reserved a conference room at a co-working space downtown. Glass walls, exposed ductwork, someone's labradoodle lounging on recycled furniture near the espresso machine. Nicole wore a blazer that looked like it had been steamed for exactly 4 minutes. Jace was already there, holding a cold brew in one hand and air typing with the other. "Heather," he nodded, handing me a tablet. "We're live in 20. Just polish this slide, the profit growth model, and update the year 2 projections." I took one look and nearly choked. The numbers weren't just wrong, they were fictional. Orders we hadn't received, packages we never offered, projections based on client types we didn't serve. There were logos from local businesses I'd never seen in our files. "These clients don't exist," I said, quietly. Jace blinked like I'd spoken in Morse code. Nicole said we had legacy leads. It's for visual balance, not literal reporting. "Visual balance?" I repeated. "On a financial forecast?" Nicole swept in behind me. Perfume strong, grin stronger. "It's aspirational, Heather. No one expects exactitude in pitch 1. It's about potential." "But this isn't potential," I said. "It's fiction." She gave me a look, the kind someone gives a toddler who won't stop asking why the sky is blue. "We just need to sell the future," she said. "Let us dream a little. You're great with spreadsheets. Make it glow." I wanted to walk out, but I didn't. Instead, I opened the files from the main order system, scanned transaction logs, looked for backup documentation from the last 3 weeks. That's when I noticed it. A string of bulk invoice numbers, each marked paid, but with no corresponding order entry. They were dated after Nicole took over. 5 in total. They totaled $7,200. I stared at the screen, my hand still on the mouse. In the past, if I caught something like this, I flagged it, fixed it, told Dad. But Dad wasn't watching. And Nicole, she wasn't interested in what I saw. After the meeting, which went long and loud with Jace high-fiving someone over free donuts, Nicole pulled me aside near the elevators. "You did good today," she said. "I know it's weird, but you're the only one who can keep this place tethered. Don't get too bogged down in details." "Details like financial records?" I asked. She paused, then laughed too loud. "Come on, you know what I mean. Just keep the gears running." I nodded, but inside something clicked, not in panic, not even in anger, something colder, cleaner. Nicole had no idea what I was actually capable of. Back at the shop, the lights buzzed like they always had. Mrs. Lockhart's order was late. The Monroe twins had called twice. The ampersand sculpture still didn't light up. Jace had left sticky notes everywhere. Brainstorm prompt, brand synergy, core vibe refresh. None of them made sense, but one thing did. The invoices. I printed them, stored the originals in a locked drawer behind the receipt folders. Then I ran a manual tally of vendor credits and noticed something else. Nicole had authorized a branding package for $1,500 from a boutique agency in Atlanta. We'd never worked with anyone outside the metro area, we didn't have the budget, and yet, there it was, approved, paid, scrubbed from the expense dashboard but still present in the raw logs. I didn't ask, not yet, but I started keeping copies. Because if Nicole was going to build an empire on flash and fiction, she wasn't going to bury the truth under it, not while I still had access to the foundation. I waited until Saturday. Nicole had declared weekends, strategy retreat days, and gone off-grid with Jace to some boutique motel full of inspiration vibes, 2 towns over. Mom said they were so dedicated. Dad said nothing at all. I used the time. The back office was quiet, the kind of quiet that lets you hear your own breath shift when something clicks. The fluorescent hum was steadier than usual. The ampersand sculpture sat unplugged near the window, its cord coiled like a dead snake. I turned off the front lights and sat behind the desk with a printout of the financial exports, a cup of gas station coffee, and a highlighter. There it was again, Atlanta. The boutique agency, Easton and Rue, had charged us for Creative Direction Package A. It didn't list deliverables, no file transfers, no branding mock-ups, just a line item and a reference code. But I recognized the name. Barely. They weren't local. They didn't specialize in print shops. Their website, which I accessed through a cached browser history Nicole hadn't cleared, was a glossy one-page scroller full of vague phrases like disruptive narrative placement and identity evolution. No client testimonials, no contact page, and no trace of a delivered product. That was the first flag. The second came in a folder Nicole had marked Pitch Resources. Inside were mood boards downloaded from free design blogs, low-res photos of storefronts with fake signage, and a video file titled Intro Draft Final Real Final MP4. I watched it twice. It was a 48-second slideshow. Stock music, glitter transitions, and a scrolling slogan that said, "The future of print isn't printing, it's presence." I didn't know whether to laugh or throw the monitor. That was what she'd paid for? No. That was what she'd billed the company for. I opened the raw system again and found the corresponding transaction log. The payment didn't come from our main account. It had been routed through a secondary vendor wallet Nicole set up after the transition, a feature I'd shown her once during an onboarding video I assumed she never watched. Clearly, she had. That account had 3 transactions in total, one for the Atlanta package, one to an LLC in Boulder called Tangerine Core, and one, this one nearly made me gasp, to a printing startup in Austin. $3,500 labeled equipment leasing. I cross-checked all open vendor accounts. We didn't have any leased equipment. We hadn't authorized out-of-state fulfillment since before the pandemic. Nothing in our regular pipeline showed anything connected to Texas. So why was Nicole sending money there? The question sat like a lead weight in my chest. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the strip mall across the street, I reopened the drawer I'd started storing hard copies in. I filed the new printouts, locked them away, and stared at the key for a long time before slipping it onto my own ring. I wasn't trying to be paranoid, but I also wasn't going to pretend this looked normal. Later that night, I sat in my car behind the shop watching the reflection of the neon ampersand in the darkened window. The sculpture still didn't work. It never had, but Nicole loved the idea of it. Collaboration, symbolism, flash, no wires, no current, just the shape of what something should be. And maybe that was the problem. She didn't want a business. She wanted a symbol, a set piece, a story she could pose inside. And I was the person asked to hold the scaffolding in place while she took the spotlight. Not anymore. I didn't tell anyone I was driving to the warehouse. I just got in the car before dawn, programmed the address from the payment records into my GPS, and headed south along the interstate with a notebook in the passenger seat and my stomach clenched into something that felt like instinct. Tangerine Core LLC didn't exist in any traditional business database, but the payment trail, small, frequent, rounded amounts, was real. And the Austin-based company Nicole had sent funds to, it shared a PO, box number with 3 other ventures, all hosted out of the same industrial park near the city's east side. That's where I went. The sun was just cresting the skyline when I pulled into the lot. Half the units were shuttered. A few had painted logos for landscaping services, drone rentals, or creative studios that hadn't posted online in over a year. Unit 12B had no sign at all, just a matte orange mailbox with a sticker that said, "We make things louder." I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, this time louder. A minute later, the door creaked open. A woman in her late 30s stood there wearing faded overalls and a fraying black hoodie. Her hair was tied back, her hands stained the unmistakable blue of risograph ink. "You from the sign company?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm from Kansas City. I work at a print shop. My sister sent payments here." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Nicole?" I nodded. She exhaled through her nose and stepped aside. "Come in." The space wasn't a front office. It was a production bay, half converted into what looked like a mock photo studio. There were stacks of unused zines, color palettes on the wall, and 3 risograph machines, 2 of which were dismantled. "She said she wanted consulting," the woman said, walking toward a dusty work table. "Said she was building a disruptor brand and needed mentorship, paid up front. First it was a few questions, then a few graphics. Then she stopped replying. She told our family she hired you for branding." The woman snorted. "Branding? All she did was beg for log lines. I told her I wasn't a copywriter. She said I wasn't thinking big enough." I stared. "She paid through a secondary wallet," I added. "No invoice ID, no record in our shop's files." "She said not to list the business name," the woman replied, her voice tightening. "Said it needed to look like a personal pivot investment." I didn't ask questions. I just stopped responding when she wanted me to host something under my license. Host what? She never clarified. Something about soft launching a parallel identity, ghost orders, social priming. I figured it was influencer nonsense. It wasn't. I knew it wasn't. I looked around the warehouse again. The color palette taped to the wall matched the background of the mock-up Nicole had shown our parents 3 weeks earlier. The same violet gradient. The same diagonal stroke behind her empire mission. She hadn't created it. She'd purchased it. "Did she mention an Austin printer?" I asked. "Something called Easton?" The woman nodded slowly. "Yeah, said they were on deck for scaling once she had proof of vision. She wanted my permission to claim our collaboration in the meantime. Said she'd credit me retroactively once she got verified." I swallowed hard. "Is she trying to build something under your name?" "I think she's trying to build something under our shop's name," I said. "Just not with us in it." The woman rubbed her forehead. "You need to get ahead of that, fast, because if she's using you for funding and us for aesthetic, she's building a shadow brand." I already knew. I just hadn't admitted it yet. Not out loud. Nicole didn't want to revive the family business. She wanted to replace it. And me? She needed me to keep everything just steady enough until she didn't. The booth was twice the size I expected. 2 Saturdays later, Nicole secured a space at the downtown Small Business Expo. She called it our grand debut, spinning her keys on a custom lanyard like she was walking into Shark Tank. "We're positioned by the east entrance," she bragged. "Prime visibility, high foot traffic, finally showing Kansas City that we're not just your grandma's print shop." She didn't mention the fact that our grandma actually founded it. I arrived early, as always, because Nicole had forgotten to pick up the printed materials, half of which I designed, formatted, and sent to press under her name. The moment I saw the booth, my stomach dropped. Gone was any trace of the shop's original name. No mention of our family legacy. No tribute to my grandfather. Instead, the entire display was drenched in violet, the same shade from that warehouse mood board. Over the table hung a new banner, bold and modern. Nix Inc., Identity, Reinvented. Nix. Her childhood nickname, her stage name in college. She'd made it the business name. She wasn't just rebranding, she was erasing. I stood frozen as she posed for a photographer in front of the banner. Jace perched beside her in sunglasses like a launch day handler. She waved at local influencers, offered branded pens, and handed out glossy flyers listing packages I'd never seen. Event legacy books, brand capsule kits, private vault design experience. She was using my files, my vendors, my systems. She just wasn't using my name. Mom arrived around 10, clutching a latte and wearing a lilac scarf that matched the booth. "Isn't it just beautiful?" she said. "Nicole's vision is so alive now." "Did you know she renamed it?" I asked, voice quiet. Mom blinked. "Well, she thought it needed an update. Print shop sounds so Manual. It is manual, I said. We run it with our hands. She tilted her head, dismissive. Honey, Nicole's thinking long term. You've always been good at the technical. Let her handle the creative. I wanted to laugh. Technical? I'd built every process they still used. I'd onboarded Nicole to the invoicing system she barely understood. I'd cleaned risograph drums while she danced through meetings in kitten heels. I looked over again at the booth. Nicole was being interviewed by a local podcast host. She was gesturing to a slideshow projected on a mounted screen behind her. Animated graphics, client testimonials, statistics that didn't belong to us. One slide showed her standing in front of our shop, but the sign above it had been photoshopped to say, Nix Inc. I stepped backward. My throat buzzed. Nicole caught my eye across the crowd and smiled, wide, rehearsed, radiant. The kind of smile you give a camera, not a person. I didn't smile back, not anymore. Instead, I turned and walked toward the restroom hallway. Not to cry, not to cool down, to plan. Nicole thought she was winning. She thought she could hollow out everything I'd protected, every process, every client, every relationship, and wear the shell like it was hers. She thought I'd just keep holding it all together while she renamed the world around me. But that's the thing about glue. It might be invisible, it might stay silent, it might work thanklessly in the background. Until it doesn't. By Monday morning, I had a plan. Not revenge, not yet. That would come later. This was something colder, cleaner, a truth gathering. Nicole had hijacked the storefront, the client relationships, even the family's narrative, but she hadn't touched the archives, because archives are tedious, they don't sparkle on Instagram. I parked 3 blocks away from the shop and walked in just before 7 a.m. The place still smelled like toner and floor polish. I didn't flip on the open sign. Instead, I moved straight to the back room, to the filing cabinet no one touched except me. I unlocked drawer 3. The order histories were still intact, so were the tax prep forms, the vendor contracts, and every custom invoice I'd printed since 2019. For 4 straight hours, I combed through everything, highlighting, flagging, copying. I wasn't building a case, I was building a timeline. Proof that the workflows Nicole was calling her revolutionary model were, in fact, mine. Proof that the client accounts she'd rebranded as Nick's partnerships had been earned long before she knew what a bleed margin was. I documented every forged quote she used at the expo, every order that had been rerouted through her private vendor wallet, every time she'd borrowed my words, my systems, and rebranded them as a breakthrough. I found a particularly galling email buried in a shared folder. She'd forwarded a contract template I wrote to Jace with the message, "Check out what I sketched last night. Think we can use this as our base doc?" My header was still on the PDF. At 11:43 a.m., I heard the front door open. Nicole's heels. I didn't move. She shouted from the front, cheerful as always. "Morning, glue stick! Jace and I are pitching a co-work concept this week. Need a slide deck by Friday." She thought she was untouchable. She thought I was still in the same place. Behind the desk, behind the orders, behind her shadow. But I'd moved, not physically, strategically. Nicole was so obsessed with visibility, she'd forgotten that power doesn't come from the spotlight. It comes from control. And I still had access to everything she didn't know how to run. The vendors, they called me. The reorder clients, they emailed me. The back-end software, still under my admin login, the one she never bothered to update. I printed a full record of her site accounts, flagged the money trail that linked the Austin printing firm to a ghost fulfillment shell, and even pulled the digital watermark data from her so-called rebrand files. The files originated on my workstation, from logins she never realized tracked timestamps. When I exited the office, she was in the break room filming a video. "Hey besties," she said to her phone. "This week is all about creative scale, building an empire with vibes and vision." She turned, spotted me, and gave that same glossy grin. "Hey, can you restock the sample packs? Oh, and make sure the invoices are current. Jace accidentally overcharged that influencer girl, but we'll comp her next round." I nodded, but I wasn't restocking anything. I was gathering my leverage. That night, I returned home and laid the documents across my kitchen table like a forensic layout. A map of lies built on stolen groundwork. And beneath it all, something deeper started to stir. Not just anger, legacy, the real one, the one she tried to rename. And I wasn't going to let her walk off with it like it was a borrowed blazer. I started small, one phone call. I chose Delmar Printing because they'd known our shop for over a decade. They weren't flashy, they didn't tweet, they didn't care about identity reinvention. They cared about clarity. Hey, Carl, I said, putting on my calmest voice. It's Heather. Just wanted to flag something I think you should see before your Friday showcase. He was polite, distracted. Shoot, you're listed as a creative partner on Nix Inc.'s brand sheet. Nicole gave it out at the Small Biz Expo last weekend. Silence. She claimed you provided exclusive stock and fulfillment support. Did you? Nope, Carl snapped. We didn't sign anything new, just the standard reorder contract. Nothing about a rebrand. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Might want to have someone check her marketing materials. A lot of names were listed. Send me a copy, he said. Appreciate the heads up, Heather. Really do. Click. I sat there staring at the receiver. One phone call, one thread pulled. It wasn't about outing her yet. It was about erosion. Quiet, internal, undeniable erosion. Not a public takedown, not yet. Just enough doubt to stall her climb. Nicole thrived on momentum. She built everything like a house of mirrors. All surface, all reflection, no structure. If you made one piece wobble, the rest started bending. By Thursday, I'd sent 4 discreet notes to vendors and 3 more to longtime clients whose quotes Nicole had plagiarized for testimonials. By Friday morning, a supplier we'd worked with since 2008 emailed me privately. Just 2 lines. Hey, saw the Nix Inc. package deck. Didn't authorize that. Let me know how you want to handle. We're on your side. I exhaled. It was working. Nicole didn't notice. She was too busy prepping for what she called a major pivot meeting. Something about a downtown accelerator pitch. Jace was involved naturally. He'd started referring to the shop as the Brand Lab and had taken over our back hallway with vision boards. Meanwhile, I cleaned up a billing mess he'd made by quoting a bulk order with outdated pricing. The client only noticed because I caught it before delivery. You're a lifesaver, the client said over the phone. Tell Nicole to give you a raise. I didn't laugh, not anymore. That afternoon, I stayed late. Nicole had left to clear her head, and Jace was trailing her like a puppy with a ring light. I locked the front door, took off my jacket, and opened the internal backup system we hadn't used since Dad's second surgery. Most of the files were old, backups from when I first started modernizing our systems. But buried in the 2021 folder was a file titled Client Legacy List, Confirmed Recurring. I opened it. It was the last documented archive of our core client base. Accounts I'd nurtured over 4 years. Churches, nonprofits, event halls, small schools. People who didn't care about vision decks. They wanted reliability, clean cuts, and someone who remembered their granddaughter's name. Nicole hadn't touched this list. She didn't even know it existed. That night, I copied it to a fresh drive and labeled it plainly, Core. I stared at the label for a long time, because that was me. Not glue, not support, core. It started unraveling faster than I expected. By Tuesday, the first deal dropped. Nicole burst into the shop just before noon, phone clutched in one hand, eyes wide with theatrical panic. They pulled out, she said. The accelerator team said they needed clarity around asset provenance. She looked directly at me when she said it, like I was supposed to know what those words meant to her. I did. Someone had flagged the pitch deck. Someone had questioned the client claims, the vendor partners, the branding rights, and Nicole thought I was the leak. Did you talk to anyone? She asked. I stayed seated behind the counter. I talk to vendors every day. It's kind of my job. Her mouth twitched. You know what I mean. I also know we listed businesses we never worked with, I said calmly. That's bound to raise questions. She scoffed. You don't get it. This is how it works now. You project capability, and then you build into it. It's about ambition. It's about trust, I said. And you're burning it. Nicole didn't yell. That wasn't her way. She got quieter. I'd seen it before. The drop in her tone that always came before something mean. You've always resented me, she said. That's what this is. You can't stand the fact that I'm better at leading than you are. You're not leading, I replied. You're pretending. She stepped back like I'd slapped her. Dad warned me you might get territorial, she said. He said you'd struggle with sharing space, but I didn't expect sabotage. That landed hard. Dad, he knew she was misrepresenting the business and still backed her? Or maybe he didn't know. Maybe she kept him dazzled with slideshows and buzzwords, the same way she'd kept everyone else distracted while she rewrote history in real time. She adjusted her tone like she was auditioning for pity. Look, if you're overwhelmed, just say so. We can shift some responsibilities. Bring Mia in full-time. Mia left last week, I said. Did you even notice? Nicole blinked. She what? She said she didn't feel comfortable being part of something so confused. Her word. Nicole turned away fast, muttering something under her breath. I watched her walk into the break room and slam her water bottle down on the counter. She didn't see me glance at the appointment ledger she left behind. She had a meeting on Friday. Location, Easton Creative Co. Time, 3 p.m. Note, brand ownership docs, confirm transfer. My pulse kicked. She wasn't just stealing name. She was trying to lock them down legally. If she registered our visuals under her private LLC, if she transferred the shop's identity into Nix Inc. with full branding rights, then everything I'd built would become hers on paper. I closed the ledger softly. She came back out a minute later, smile perfectly reapplied. We good? She asked. I nodded. We're good. But I lied, because in 3 days, I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to meet her there. Friday came fast, too fast. Nicole left early, dressed like a billboard. Velvet blazer, sunglasses indoors, phone clutched in one hand like a scepter. Big day, she chirped, pausing at the door. Don't wait up, might be celebrating late. I let her go. Then I followed her. Easton Creative Co. wasn't an office. It was a loft space carved into a gentrified warehouse near the riverfront. All reclaimed wood, Edison bulbs, and over-designed bar stools. Nicole didn't see me come in. She was too busy dazzling a young man in a turtleneck and a woman holding a file folder. They sat at a conference table with a brushed steel surface, 3 sets of signature pages stacked neatly between them. Nicole flipped through them like she already owned the room. Let's confirm the final terms, the woman said. We're transferring exclusive usage of the mark Nix Inc. and associated visual assets to your LLC, correct? Correct, Nicole said, smiling. All visuals originated under my direction. I stepped forward. Actually, I said, they originated on the shop server under my login. I've got time-stamped records, raw file data, and 3 years of client correspondence to confirm it. Nicole's head snapped around like she'd heard a gunshot. The man in the turtleneck looked confused. I'm sorry. I'm her sister, I said. Operations lead. I have full access to the legacy systems. None of these designs were created by Nicole. They were lifted from our in-house archives and reskinned. Nicole stood, palms flat on the table. You're not supposed to be here. I'm exactly where I need to be, I said. Because what you're doing, it's not rebranding, it's identity theft. The woman holding the documents raised her eyebrows. Do you have evidence? I handed over a thin folder. Just enough. Raw export timestamps, original invoice headers, internal notes from Nicole forwarding my drafts and passing them off as sketches. The woman skimmed silently. Nicole laughed, brittle. This is pathetic. She's spiraling. You can ignore her. The woman didn't. I can't complete this transfer until we clarify authorship, she said. If these materials originated under a separate business entity, we'll need legal release and consent from all involved parties. The words landed like stones. Nicole's hands curled at her sides. You just blew this up, she said, voice low. For what, credit? No, I said, for the truth. The man in the turtleneck cleared his throat awkwardly. Maybe we should reconvene next week. Nicole didn't move. I turned and walked toward the elevator, heart hammering but steady. I didn't need her to fall. I just needed her to stop pretending I was invisible. She followed me out 10 seconds later. You just cost me a brand deal. No, I said, not even turning. You cost yourself one the second you tried to erase me from what I built. At the curb, I paused. She looked like she wanted to scream, but didn't. That was always her game. Rage, wrapped in charm, spun into something passable. You think this wins? She said. No, I said again. This isn't the win. Then I opened my bag, pulled out a single document. This is. Her face blanched. The next night, the local chamber hosted a community business forum. Just a 2-hour mixer with folding chairs, lukewarm cider, and a mic stand too short for most adults. Nicole was scheduled to speak third. The flyer called her founder of Nix Inc., Kansas City's boldest brand revival. I didn't RSVP. I showed up. The forum took place in the basement of the downtown library. Fluorescent lighting, paper programs, a folding table covered in plastic cups of trail mix. I stood near the back, coat still on, file folder in hand. Nicole wore a red blazer and a borrowed confidence. She leaned into the mic with her usual breathy warmth. My sister and I inherited a shop with roots, but no wings, she began. So I reimagined it, gave it a new name, a new path, I built something future-facing, something bold. The audience, mostly small business owners and young creatives, nodded. They wanted to believe her. Nicole was so good at sounding brave without being specific. Until she made one mistake. I developed every system we use now from scratch, she said. I stepped forward. Can you clarify which systems you mean? The room turned. Nicole flinched. I walked slowly to the front, raising the folder. Because this, I said, is the original development timeline, filed, dated, and backed up across 5 drives. And this, I held up another page, is the invoice history you presented to Easton Cummerty last week, copied directly from my templates. Excuse me, Nicole tried. I looked at the crowd. My name is Heather. I was the operations lead of our family's print shop for 6 years. Every vendor you've seen listed under Nick's Inc., I onboarded them. Every workflow that kept orders moving, I built it. And for the past 6 months, I've been silently cleaning up the mess Nicole made, pretending she did it all. Gasps, some confused murmurs. She's not reviving anything, I said. She's replacing, erasing, lying. Nicole's face drained of color. Someone from the chamber approached, whispering, asking if I had documentation. I handed it over. Meanwhile, Nicole stood frozen at the mic, breath shallow. Are you serious? She hissed. You're doing this here? I looked her dead in the eyes. This is the only place you haven't bought the narrative yet. Someone clapped. I didn't turn to see who. Nicole stepped away from the mic, stormed past me, shouldered her bag like it weighed more than she did. And just before she left, she turned and spat. You'll regret this. But I already had. I regretted staying silent. I regretted thinking glue was enough. Now I was something else. It was supposed to be a celebration. Dad's retirement dinner was held at a small banquet hall just outside the city. Low ceilings, long tables, centerpieces that looked like they'd been assembled by someone's niece in a rush. Mom had picked the menu, of course, chicken or salmon, always chicken or salmon. The whole extended family was there, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Old church friends, even Mr. Baker from the hardware store came, still wearing his apron. Nicole showed up last. She wore ivory and gold, like she was the guest of honor. Jace trailed behind, sheepish. Everyone clapped when she entered. Mom beamed. I stayed near the coffee urn. Dad was already seated. He looked older than I remembered, smaller, somehow. But when he smiled at me, I still saw the man who used to carry stacks of copy paper like they weighed nothing. We didn't speak much during dinner, just pleasantries. Nicole made the first toast. To Dad, she said, lifting her glass, for giving us roots and letting us replant them wherever we choose. People nodded. Someone said, beautiful. I stood slowly. I'd like to say something too, I said. The clinking stopped. Chairs shifted. All eyes turned to me. I walked to the front of the room with a small folder in hand. Not thick, not dramatic, just enough. I've worked in our family shop since I was 19, I said. Most of you know that. What you might not know is that for the past year, I've watched someone else claim that work, my sister. Nicole sat back in her chair, arms crossed. I continued. She's renamed it, repackaged it, tried to erase the legacy she pretended to honor, and she did it while our parents stood beside her. Gasps. Mom's face dropped. I held up a single page. This is a contract Nicole almost signed to transfer full branding rights to herself, without legal ownership, using visuals, files, and client accounts I built, under a name our grandfather founded. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just laid the truth out like a bill. Dad stood slowly. Heather, maybe this isn't the... No, I said, gently but firmly. It is. Then I turned to him fully. You gave her the spotlight, Dad. You gave her the speech. The narrative, the name, but I kept the business alive while you were recovering. I modernized it, I saved it, you know that. Silence. Real silence. Not tension, reckoning. Nicole stood. You're just bitter. Maybe, I said, but I'm not invisible anymore. And then I handed the folder to Dad. He didn't speak, but he didn't look away either. Nobody clapped after I finished speaking. Nicole left first. She didn't yell. She didn't throw anything. She just stood, gathered her things, and walked out like the room wasn't even there. Jace hesitated. Then he followed. The silence they left behind buzzed louder than any outburst. Dad still hadn't opened the folder. He sat with it on his lap, his fingers gripping the edge like it might burn. Mom leaned toward him and whispered something, but he didn't respond. Finally, he looked at me. I didn't know, he said. The words were quiet, so soft I barely heard them. I should have asked more questions. That's what broke me, not his guilt, but the fact that it took this for him to finally believe what I'd been holding alone for years. You didn't want to know, I said, because her version was prettier. Mom spoke next. Heather, this wasn't the place. It was exactly the place, I interrupted. Because if I'd said it at home, you'd have changed the subject. And if I'd said it at the shop, you'd have told me not to rock the boat. There's never a right time when you're the one being erased. A murmur ran through the guests. Most kept their heads down. A few avoided my eyes. But Mr. Baker, still in his apron, walked over and rested a hand on my shoulder. I remember you running that register in high school, he said. Always knew who was keeping the lights on. I nodded, throat tight. Dad finally opened the folder. He didn't speak for a full minute, just read, page by page. When he was done, he stood and looked around the room. Everyone watched him. I made a mistake, he said, a big one. Mom looked horrified. Her hand gripped her wine glass like it might shatter. I let one daughter rewrite history, Dad continued, and the other carry the weight of it. Then he turned to me. I don't expect you to forgive that, he said, but I'm done pretending I don't see it. That was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get, and I took it. Not because it fixed anything, but because it meant I wasn't crazy. That night, after the hall emptied and the air settled, I stayed behind. I gathered the centerpieces, cleared the coffee cups, took the leftover trail mix and dropped it into plastic containers. And when I reached the podium, I looked at the microphone one last time. Then I packed it up, because the next time I'd speak, it would be at my table, on my terms. I didn't go back to the shop, not after that night. Nicole never returned either. The Knicks Inc. sign disappeared from her feed. Jace posted a single vague quote about new seasons and lessons in resilience, then vanished. Dad called once, left a voicemail about working things out. I didn't respond because I wasn't interested in working things out anymore. I was building something else. 2 weeks after the retirement dinner, I rented a unit near Midtown, small sunlit high ceilings. The landlord offered to patch the drywall, but I asked him to leave the nail holes. I wanted to remember what it looked like before the layers were added. The space smelled like paper and intention. I hung a simple sign over the door. Core Press. No tagline, no flourish, just truth. I brought in the vendors I trusted, the old clients I'd served for years, the ones who remembered birthdays, who mailed thank you cards, who still paid with checks. One by one, they returned. Not because of branding, because of memory, because of integrity. Because when I called, I didn't pitch a vision. I reminded them of what we'd already built. The first week, I made enough to cover rent. The second, I broke even. By the third, I had to turn down a bulk order just to sleep. I didn't tell many people. I didn't post glossy photos or launch with a party. I just worked. Silently, precisely, proudly. One morning, as I was trimming stock for a local bookstore, I got a call. Unknown number, I answered. Hi, a familiar voice said. It's Mom. I waited. I drove by the shop, she continued. It looks different. I'm not there anymore, I said. I know. Silence. I heard about Core, she added, tentative. Someone said you're doing well. I am. She didn't respond for a moment, then softly. I didn't know how much you were holding until I saw it, until you showed everyone. You didn't want to see it? I said. That's different. Another pause. You've always been the strong one, she said. No, I replied. I was just the quiet one. She didn't argue, didn't apologize, just whispered, I'm proud of you. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel hollow when I hung up. Because pride that comes after truth isn't flattery, it's currency. That night, I stayed late. The risograph hummed behind me, the kettle whistled, a stack of final proofs sat beside my elbow, clean and sharp. And on the last page, where the footer used to say Nicks Inc., a new line glowed in soft black ink. Core Press, founded by Heather Monroe. This time, nobody would erase it. It came on a Monday. I just locked up early after finishing a client proofing session. The sun dipped low across the concrete, casting golden strips between the alley and the lot. The mail slot clinked. I almost didn't check it. Figured it was a flyer or junk ad. But something about the envelope stopped me. It was thick. Cream-colored, handwritten. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled it open. Inside was a folded sheet of letterhead, the old kind, the kind Dad used to use for seasonal updates back when the shop still sent holiday notes. At the top, Monroe Family Printworks. My breath caught. The letter was short. Heather, I updated the records. You're now listed as founder of the modern press entity. The shop was built by your grandfather's hands, but saved by yours. Nicole declined to contest. She's moved on. I'm sorry it took a public reckoning for us to see what you carried alone. This isn't restitution, it's acknowledgement. Love, Dad. There was no check enclosed, no key, no offer, just truth, in print. I stood there in the still shop, the hum of the street faint behind the glass, and I cried. Not loud, not broken, just full, because I had spent years being the invisible force that kept things running, the glue, the support, the silent one who didn't ask for credit. But now, my name was on paper, not because someone granted it to me, because I fought for it. At the back of the shop, I kept a drawer labeled Scraps. It held test prints, miscuts, and sheets too beautiful to throw away. I opened it and found a thick linen card, blank on both sides, soft to the touch. I took the press plate I designed months earlier, the one I couldn't afford to emboss yet, and lowered it into the letterpress by hand. Then I rolled ink, steady, pressed the plate, lifted the card, and there it was. A single perfect line in deep black ink. Core Press, founded in legacy, built in truth. I placed it in the window right beside the door. No spotlight, no applause, just permanence. Because when you build something with your name, your hands, your soul, you don't need their permission to call it yours. You just need to stop asking and start printing.